I would like to talk about editing, and I'm going to use the film Whiplash as a subject because Whiplash won an Oscar for Best Editing, but more importantly, Whiplash applies the techniques of editing in a way that will make it easier to explain some of the principles. I'm going to break it all down and hopefully you'll walk away with a better understanding. Spoiler warning, if you haven't seen Whiplash, I have to spoil some of the movie to talk about it. Director Damien Chazelle and editor Tom Cross often contrast slow, conventional edits with more frenetic ones from scene to scene. Different scenes have different ideas.
Really was told stylistically. He knew he wanted to make a movie that would be an editor's showcase. He wanted to tell his story with a certain level of suspense and tension and manic energy, and he knew he wanted to illustrate that through the film editing.
The first cut of the film is actually audio of a drum playing over black, and then a jarring smash cut to silence. This is a film of contrast. The film begins with one long push down a hallway. It's kind of like the inverse of the end of The Godfather, where Michael closes the door on the audience. This shot introduces us to the character and takes us into his world, where he is alone, working hard, practicing at the drums. This single shot fully encapsulates the subject of the film we are about to watch. And then Fletcher enters. The edit of the scene seems simple. We cut back and forth between Andrew and Fletcher, and it seems to be pretty straightforward, but the notable detail is that there is a musical tempo to the way the cuts happen. If we look at the frame counts, they are pretty even, and Fletcher breaks this tempo. Right away, the editor establishes a key grammatical choice of the film, that Fletcher is in control of the tempo and pace of each scene by dictating these abrupt interruptions. When Fletcher gives the cutoff signal with his hand, he interrupts Andrew's flow. It is like a boxer punching his opponent in Raging Bull.
So he knew that the musical scenes and the rehearsing and the practicing would be fast and would be brutal. He wanted it to be ferocious. He said he wanted the musical scenes to feel like the boxing scenes from Raging Bull.
Let's take a look at how he edits the music scenes, starting with the band Andrew plays in before he gets recruited. The scene is bright, almost bluish-green in tone. The teacher enters, the students barely notice, and he has to repeat his good morning. Pace of the edits is slow, almost without rhythm. Even the framing feels sort of naturally chaotic. And it's missing a sense of tension, because each consecutive shot doesn't change the previous shot, and it overall just feels very distant. There are no close-ups of instruments except for the drums, because from Andrew's perspective, that's what he's paying attention to. Notice the framing of the players. It does not give us a sense of order or control. Now let's compare that to the scene where Andrew first plays with studio band. The lighting is a warm tungsten gold. All the scenes where Andrew plays with Fletcher have this gold tone, as if it is the shiny gold dream he is pursuing, which contrasts with the bluish-green tone of his mundane, normal life. Right away, this scene feels different. It starts to build tension, and we can see it from Andrew's reaction and how serious all the other players are. We see them getting ready, and then Andrew reacting, and then the 3 consecutive close-ups of the clock tell us that time is important. And then exactly on the minute, everyone jumps. Fletcher hasn't even entered the room yet, and the reaction of the players tells us everything we need to know about him. Take note of the composition of this shot. It has Gestaltian rhythm, whereas look at one of the shots from when the other teacher entered the room. Color and composition tell 2 different stories: order versus chaos, serious versus relaxed. This is Mr. Kramer entering the room, and then this is Fletcher. Close-up of his shoes, and then people reacting to him. Showing us the character's shoes builds tension, because the longer you withhold the character, the more we anticipate and want to see them. And then showing people reacting to a person we don't yet see builds suspense and elevates that person's importance in our minds. And the thing to ask when looking at an edit is, does each shot add context and meaning to the shot that precedes it and follows it? What does this shot add to this shot? And what does this shot add to this shot? And how did this sequence of shots add to this shot that these shots did not add to this shot? If these were 2 different films, I would say that one of these editors knows what he's doing. But they're from the same film, so we know that these choices are a deliberate contrast that makes the exposition about this character and the feelings we get from watching him enter a room feel different. And that's why editing and directorial choices completely changes how we experience something as simple as a character entering a room completely differently. Seeing the characters at attention shows us that Fletcher is in control. Their focus and attention adds meaning to the next shot, where he emphasizes the importance of Fletcher's hand with a long moving close-up, revealing the band waiting for the slightest move. The editing style of the music section hits the tempo of the song in an exciting way that emphasizes the structure. He cuts on each quarter note of brass and holds on the piano. Let's watch it again, but look at the cuts. This helps the audience feel the music. It also emphasizes the precision of the band, but also makes the audience pay attention to each instrument. By contrast, the other scene did not cut on the musical bars. And the pace is slower, making it less exciting. Once again, these contrasting styles narrate details about Andrew's experience and form a grammar that makes us understand why studio band is so important to Andrew. The group looks at the door, we get a shot of Fletcher outside listening, cut back to Andrew thinking about it, and then it punches in closer to emphasize the importance, and then back to the group disappointed. Let's appreciate this editing. It builds tension and sets our expectations, and helps show that this is not the music room that Andrew wants to be in. And the following scene shows Andrew walking to the studio band, staring through the window, showing us that studio band is important, Fletcher is a big deal, it's building tension. You gotta appreciate how good this editing is, how good this storytelling is, and how all the scenes I've talked about so far are working together to build this story. Which brings us back to where I left off, Andrew in studio band. It starts with the camera low, looking up at Andrew's center frame. In cinema language, he looks powerful, which sets up his arc within the scene. When Fletcher enters the room, he is positioned below Fletcher, and his established position on the right with Fletcher on the left. I believe this was chosen so that we don't see the band in the background. The ensuing battle is mostly between Andrew and Fletcher. The scene starts out pretty conventionally. Cuts are evenly spaced, cutting to the tempo on each measure at the snare. Fletcher gives Andrew the chance to show off his skills, and by all accounts, Andrew is playing correctly. Edits are still happening evenly on the snare. Fletcher seems to approve. Andrew looks like he's starting to feel confident. Fletcher even compliments him. And then Fletcher begins his process with Andrew, starting with an abrupt interruption using his cutoff hand that was established in the opening scene as Fletcher's power punch.
Little trouble there.
The music stops, the shot changes. Fletcher is in full control of the entire scene and the edit.
5, 6.
This scene is a progression. Fletcher starts to wear down Andrew's confidence. With each cutoff that tells Andrew his playing is not on time, Fletcher gets closer and closer to Andrew, starts to tower over him, and becomes more and more intimidating. All leading to this climactic moment where Fletcher throws a chair at Andrew's head. The moment is shown in 3 shots. The scene shifts gears and the coverage changes, giving us Andrew's face close up in profile. Fletcher is still on the left and Andrew on the right, but as the scene progresses, Fletcher will dominate the frame, pushing Andrew further to the right. And the pace of the cuts will become quicker and more abrupt to emphasize the energy of the moment. When Fletcher slaps Andrew, the cuts are not only early, but the camera jumps the action line, which makes the action more aggressive and disorienting. Because characters flipping sides in the frame causes tension. It's as if he slaps him so hard that they switch places, and the viewer's mind has to reassess the composition just as Andrew is disoriented. Fletcher dominates over Andrew, but it also makes it more powerful when Fletcher leans in, bringing Andrew's reaction into frame. He not only faces away, but he's pushed to the far right. Having Andrew facing the right makes it feel like he's turning away from Fletcher.
Now answer my question. Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer! Rushing.
And the scene progresses until Andrew starts to cry. We started the scene front and center, framed looking up in a position of power, and we saw a progression of edit changes and shifts in coverage until Andrew is broken and small, which ends in one long 2-shot, which lets us really soak in the performances.
So for the final father-fucking time, say it louder! I'm upset! Carl. Start practicing harder, Neiman. Whiplash.
Andrew completes his arc in the scene, defeated, small, and in the background.
But I think what was extra intelligent about how he wanted to do it was that he wanted the other scenes with other characters to have a different editing style. So the scenes with Andrew and his girlfriend, played by Melissa Benoist, he wanted those to play the opposite. He wanted those to be gentle and romantic, and in that way, they're very traditional.
The date scene begins with an establishing 2-shot, showing the location and the geography of the scene, and our characters are distant from each other on opposite sides of the frame. We cut to medium over-the-shoulder shots, and the edits are pretty conventional, favoring the characters evenly, giving them time to speak and react to each other. This is the most basic type of coverage for 2 people talking. Establishing shot, then go to over the shoulders, and this is what it looks like. 2-shot, over the shoulder, and then punch in for close-ups at the dramatic moments so we can see the actors emote. And that's pretty much what's happening here. We cut based on who's speaking and who's reacting.
She did want to be an actress when she
This continues until Andrew asks Nicole what she does. The coverage changes to close-ups, because these questions are more intimate, but also more important to Andrew. And if you look at the frame counts, the pace of the cuts is pretty even, allowing them each enough time to say their
What do you
lines.
want to study?
I don't really know.
But Nicole doesn't really know what she wants to do,
I don't know yet.
and she doesn't have her future planned
So
out.
Fordham was just like a random school?
This is something that her and Andrew do not connect over, so we go back to mediums.
It's the best music school in the country.
Well, Fordham was Fordham.
We already know that the most important thing to Andrew is what he does. There is some awkward silence, and we
I don't
cut
love
back
it
to
there,
the
to be honest.
two-shot, and you can sort of feel the distance between them. And then Nicole confesses she feels homesick, and we come back to the close-ups. Close-ups help the audience see the emotions on the characters' faces,
I don't know.
and it feels more intimate. The audience feels closer because the
pisses me off
perspective
when
is
people
closer
pretend
to
like they're
them.
not.
This scene follows very conventional cinema language rules, and it helps to set up contrast with the other scenes.
I don't know.
But Andrew's able to confess something intimate himself,
I still go to the movies with my dad.
and the scene ends with them finding a connection. The shot of the feet under the table is a great insert because it shows visually what the characters are feeling internally, and it adds context to the shots that follow. The breakup scene is cut in a similar way, but the interesting choice is that they add a dolly in on Nicole. This is because we're understanding Nicole's perspective and feeling closer to her as Andrew explains his ridiculous reasons. And for Andrew, it goes backwards, because we are taken aback by his logic. The finale brings all the techniques demonstrated throughout the film together. It contrasts different styles of editing at different moments. Let's start with the power dynamic. The scene begins by following Andrew onto the stage, and at first he is level with the camera. It even looks up at him from behind to frame him with a sense of power. But then when Fletcher comes onto the stage, it looks down at Andrew, and Fletcher towers over him because Fletcher has all the power. And at first it refrains from showing us Fletcher's face, because like Andrew, we are not sure what's going on, until Fletcher reveals that they're not playing Whiplash, they're playing a different song. We get a shot from the side, slightly from behind for this partial reveal. It cuts to Andrew to show his reaction and does a push to show us the realization. That's when Fletcher turns and reveals his cards, and the lights dim on Andrew's face. Panning versus cutting helps us feel how frantic Andrew is. And then the music starts. Notice that we don't get any close-ups of Andrew's playing. You can see him flailing around, but close-ups usually show us the precision of playing, and there's nothing precise about what Andrew's doing. They give us Fletcher's disapproval from a distance, from Andrew's perspective. The only close-ups we get of the band are their reactions to Andrew playing, and the edits we get do not cut to the tempo of the music. But they still don't give us any close-ups of Andrew or the band playing. The pace of the edit is very slow and fixated on Andrew. It's all intended to illustrate how badly Andrew is playing and also contrast with the second half of the scene. When the scene finishes, Andrew is once again shot from above. Fletcher towers over him, tells him he doesn't have it. Andrew is defeated and retreats to his dad, but then he decides to go back out there. This is where we get the second half of the scene, which is edited completely differently. We get our first close-up of Andrew's sticks, and the camera is low, looking up at Andrew, who holds the power now. The shot of Fletcher is level, and we can see that he isn't quite sure how to take what's happening. And then with a sudden burst, Andrew takes control of the scene, and right away we get musical edits cutting on tempo. The close-up of Andrew playing shows precision by the established grammar of the film. Close-up of Fletcher's nose flaring. Andrew starts to completely take over the scene and the band, telling the bass player he will cue him in. The edit of the scene is going to start to change. We will get close-ups of the instruments, it's going to edit on tempo, we will get dynamic moving shots of the band, all meant to make us feel the music and feel the precision of the playing. And when Fletcher comes over to intimidate Andrew, we get a quick smash cut to a cymbal crash, which interrupts Fletcher in the way that Fletcher used to interrupt Andrew. Fletcher retreats, and we are left to admire Andrew's skill. As the song progresses, Tom Cross doesn't give us one style or follow one set of rules. Here he cuts evenly and lets each shot play for a full measure. Then he uses his coverage creatively at the drum fill so that we can feel the artistry of that moment. And he does this throughout the song. All sort of building to this moment where everything comes together. Notice the variety of the timing of the edits here. They're all on tempo, but they vary duration like an editor's jazz solo. Rhythmic but improvisational. And then Fletcher starts to appreciate what Andrew is doing. There's one really long take where Fletcher starts to actually smile. Fletcher and Andrew start working together. And then Chazelle does this really cool whip pan that shows their full connection. Not only are they on the same level, but each whip places them in the exact same position in the frame. And the whip, rather than a cut, emphasizes their collaboration in the moment. This is everything that they were working towards. But Andrew doesn't stop. He continues, because Fletcher's not in control anymore. Andrew is. He even tells Fletcher that he will cue him.
Andrew, what are you doing, man? I'll cue you.
This is where Andrew surpasses what was expected of him. All his hours of practicing, all his bloody hands, have led to him being able to play just like this. We get a bunch of close-ups and plenty of coverage showing us just how difficult this is. Andrew is like Icarus flying close to the sun, and all of these close-ups are like seeing his wings on the verge of falling apart. And it cuts away to his dad, peeking through a doorway, witnessing that his son is lost. And then Fletcher steps in with full approval. Tom Cross gives us one last montage of close-ups of Andrew playing, showing his precision and how far he's come, literally his blood and sweat. And in the last moments of the film, they share eye contact. The subtle timing of seeing Fletcher crack a smile, and Andrew reacting. Andrew has achieved what Fletcher wanted, and earned his respect.
You can see JK suddenly getting so, oh my God, I finally succeeded.
Right.
You know, and it was such a great thing. So it's actually a very happy ending. Fletcher gets what he wants, that nod at the end, and Andrew gets what he wants.
I mean, the idea was to write the saddest happy ending I could imagine. You know, sort of like, it's like because it is true that Fletcher, in every single way, gets exactly what he wants at the end, and that to me is what hopefully makes the ending a little troubling. That that kind of behavior gets rewarded.
His lack of regard for anything outside of creating great jazz is his single-minded focus, and his completely just doesn't care about what collateral damage there may be, and that that's the central debate of the film. Really, is what cost is too great.
Damien Chazelle gives us all the clues we need to understand the film. Fletcher tells Andrew,
Charlie Parker became Bird because Jones threw a cymbal at his head.
And in the next scene, he throws a chair at his head. And then in the dinner scene, Andrew shows he's drank the Kool-Aid by relaying this dogma to his family.
Charlie Parker didn't know anybody until Joe Jonas threw a cymbal at his head.
So that's your idea of success, huh?
I think being the greatest musician of the 20th century is anybody's idea of success.
Fletcher tells us what he was doing.
Truth is, I don't think people understood what it was I was doing at Schaefer. I wasn't there to conduct. Any fucking moron can wave his arms and keep people in tempo. I was there to push people beyond what's expected of them.
And when he tells the story of Sean Casey, he explains how he recruited him. And the description sounds like he's talking about Andrew, because Andrew's journey mirrors Sean Casey.
But they didn't see what I saw. This scared, skinny kid, cursing himself because he couldn't get his scales right. I saw a drive in him, and I put him in studio band.
And that's exactly what Fletcher did with Andrew. Found him practicing, saw a drive in him, and recruited him to studio band. And Andrew pushed himself, gave up his girlfriend to focus on music, and we see the cost. He almost dies in an accident and gets dismissed from Schaefer. It's a tragic story, an example of the fall character arc. The film begins with him drumming and ends with him doing exactly what Fletcher had been training him to do. But at what cost? This is an incredible film, and it is a master class on editing. You can go through the film and choose any 3 shots and learn something about editing. Right now the film is on Netflix. I highly recommend you go watch it in its entirety. Hopefully this was insightful. Like and subscribe for more.